For Selectwoman Kupchick, and we are here to give an update on the Rooster River project that we're working on, and we wanted to make sure that our community had an update. And obviously, many of you here have emailed us, and also we are taping FairTV so that those residents and business owners can have an opportunity to see it if they weren't able to attend tonight. I'll go through it again. We have Bill Hurley, our engineering manager to my right. We have Bucky Marsilio, John Marsilio, who's our DPW director. And we have State Senator Tony Wong. And we have State Representative Kristen McCarthy-Vahey, who represents pretty much the whole Rooster River area, and on both sides of the river. And we have our senior civil engineer, Megan James, who is a new fairly new addition to our engineering department. With the clip. Yeah. Okay, so as we all know, this has been going on for a very long time. I mean, the projects, when I came into Town Hall 4 years ago, but even before that, I was on the RTM from 1999 to 2003. And the Rooster River project was, I believe, the Rooster River projects were on the town's capital waterfall list way back then. And so when I came into office, we just want to do an overview, but when I came into office, we were able to get some ARPA, that's called American Rescue Plan funding for the town. And so we spent quite a bit of time with all of our departments, and we went through the entire capital planning workshop waterfall list to look at all the different projects we had in town. But I didn't really even need to look at it or even have a discussion. To me, Rooster River was top of the list. It has been on this list for so long, and it needed an infusion of attention and funding. So we appropriated $3.2 million of the ARPA funds for the phase 1 Rooster River project. But just to go over what you're looking at here, 2018, the flood event, obviously many of you experienced it. The MOU with Bridgeport and Mountain Grove Cemetery. And then in 2019, we began the conceptual plans for the cleanup. And then 2020, the town approved $320,000 funding for the design of the plan, of the mitigation plan. And then in 21, again, we got the $3.2 million in the grant money, and it was approved for all 3 funding bodies. In 2022, 60% of that design was completed, and we applied for the federal and state permits. And I know that's frustrating for some people, but anytime you're doing anything in any watershed areas, really at all, you have to go through the state and the Army Corps of Engineers for permitting. And they're not very fast. And Bill Hurley can talk more about that when he gets up here, the frustration with that. And here we are in 2023. We were lucky enough with our state delegation we were able to receive $2.5 million toward the phase 2 portion of the Rooster River project. Now, all of this stuff is on our town website. We have all this information about the different phases, but I wanted to just, briefly go through those for our residents. So here, I mean, obviously this is not something you're not used to seeing, flooding, right? Fairfield and Bridgeport did conduct joint cleanups together. The town purchased, during this process, a piece of property became available at 150 Villa Avenue, and we moved to purchase it because we thought it would be a great place to put a detention pond. And we partnered with the Aspetuck Land Trust, so there would be passive recreation area there, but also it allows us to put a large detention pond, which Bill felt would work really well with this whole thing. As you know, the Rooster River starts in Trumbull, it comes down. It doesn't really impact Trumbull because it starts there, but it comes down, and where our basins are, and Bill will go into more detail. But we started the Fairchild Wheeler to put a detention basin. Am I still good, Luke? I'm hearing beeping. Okay. And then we go to Owen Fish Park, and then we come around down to Villa, and we felt that this property, when it came up, would be really a crucial area to have another detention pond. Because obviously, I don't know where everybody lives here, but that whole area gets flooded out pretty bad. So that we did, and that is a design process. Obviously, a lot of testing has to be done, and we're working with Bridgeport to survey, design, and remove the sediments in the river contingent on property owner easements. And I just want to mention that we spent a lot of time mailing residents who have actual Rooster River on their property or behind their home letters asking for a temporary easement for the town, and even sent people out to put them in their doors to try to get easements. And Bill can talk more about that, but to date we have only 7 residents have given us permission to access the river to clean out Christmas trees people throw in there and all kinds of stuff. I've participated in Rooster River cleanups, and I've seen the kinds of things that are thrown in there. And there's over 30, would you say, residents that. Yeah, there's over 30. So we need, we're trying to get easements for all of the residents that abut the Rooster River, because, obviously being able to clean out the debris and all of that helps with the flow, and we don't have the flooding that we get. So we are trying, and I'm just going to say, I brought easement forms for anyone who has the river on their property. We would really appreciate it if you haven't yet filled one out and you do have the river in your property to please fill one out tonight, because it really benefits everyone. So they'll be here, and we will have them available for anybody who would like to fill them out.
Yeah, excuse me, Brenda, and that goes for North Strand Avenue. There's a small ditch in the back there, and between fences, trees, and it being private, we can't even get to it. So we definitely need the easement in order to do any work there. London Brook is probably the same situation. Yeah, we have forms here. If you want to sign, that at least gets the first.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the whole PowerPoint that we have, and hopefully most of the questions will be answered as we move along. And then at the end, we'll take questions. So what has changed since 2018? The site with the minimum effect and benefits eliminated, and I think this is your part, isn't it? Or is this my part? Right. Okay. So again, we received the $2.5 million in the state grant from our state delegation, and we're continuing to work with Bridgeport and MetroCog for additional state grants to be able to do all the phases of the Rooster River project. Now, I know people think that all of these phases are going to completely eliminate the flooding. It's not. It's going to reduce the flooding. And as we all have seen over especially the past year, we're getting rain events that we really didn't get before. The rain sometimes comes down so fast, and it just overflows all the sewers in our town. We're having infrastructure issues really throughout the entire town because, well, as someone who grew up here, this town was not built for 62,000 people. Our infrastructure was not built for 62,000 people. And so we're seeing, a combination of climate change and rain events and weather events. And we have an infrastructure system that really can't support the amount of people we have. But the Rooster River area has been an issue, and we believe with these, the phase 1 and phase 2 portions and this is all engineered. I didn't come up with this plan. This will have a real impact on the flooding. And you take the next, are you up next? All right. You?
Okay. Everyone can hear me good? Okay. So we'll just start a quick recap there with the permit status. Tungus Hill Park Detention Area, September 1st, 2023. So this is up to minute slide, so to speak. Connecticut DEP authorizes a determination approval for the Tungus Hill Detention Area. The dam safety permit is forthcoming, and the Army Corps of Engineers permit is still pending, anticipated in a couple of months. The Fairchild Wheeler Golf Course, September 2023, Connecticut DEP hopes to authorize a determination for the Tungus Hill Detention Area. And again, just like the other project, the dam safety permit forthcoming, and the Army Corps of Engineers permit is still pending. The Villa Avenue project, this one might even be able to leapfrog over the others because there's no state or federal permits required, only an inland wetland permit. So a submission for this project, and that's the parcel that the town bought earlier this year, 150 Villa Avenue. I think it was the old diocese property years ago. Anyway, that one, the submission for the permit is for fall of 2023. Owen Fish Park, the design is in progress. And again, the permit submission, we have it scheduled for winter of 2024. And then through the state grant and working with the city of Bridgeport, we are working together to get sediment removal for the Rooster River. A lot of residents had asked, why doesn't the town, remove the sediment? Well, number one, it's technically not town property, so hence that's why we need those easements. And number two, the sediment removal involves the city of Bridgeport. And the benefit for that is rather than doing a dike, extending the dike even higher because there's trees, there's all sorts of property issues, this may be the best approach. And so we are currently working on that, and we tend to use some of the grant money for this portion. Sure. Can you just push it down?
Can you hear me? I just want to introduce Pamela Iacono. She's walking around with a clipboard. She has the easement forms if anybody wants to fill one out, and Pamela works in my office. But she has the easement forms, and she's got that clipboard. So we would really appreciate anyone who has the river in their yard to please sign the easement. Thanks so much.
And as I mentioned before, we with all the grants, some popped up on the screen. Sorry, the computer thing. I got rid of it. The 6.5 million grant funding total, and that would cover our phase one construction, flood mitigation for the 150 Villa Avenue, which we're calling phase two, and sediment removal from Brook Lawn to Kings Highway is phase three. We're coordinating with Bridgeport. Up here to the left is the whole watershed of Rooster River. It even starts near the Trumbull Mall. In one of the readings there, it said it's a 15-mile long river. To just give you an idea how much water the watershed encompasses. The area to the lower left is the town line there, and the upper right is mainly Bridgeport and Trumbull. You can see some of the projects, Lake Forest, Island Brook, Oxbrook. Those are proposals that the city of Bridgeport is hoping to create detention for as well. So not only will residents in the lower portion of the watershed benefit from the Fairfield detention areas, they'll benefit from what Bridgeport is doing as well. Again, just those who might not be familiar with the design process or the project process, we start with the design. The design is almost complete. We're at what they call semi-final stage. Once we get the permits, if we have to incorporate any additional comments, then we would do that, consider it final design. We would go out to bid, and then we would construct the projects. We talked about funding, finance, and the grants. We talked about federal, state, and local permits. The federal, just for those who don't know, is Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The state is the Connecticut DEP. We actually needed two from the Department of Environmental and Energy Protection. And local permits on some of the projects, especially the smaller ones, we will need to go through our inland wetland conservation agency, but they are very familiar with it. And obviously the details will have to be ironed out, but in concept, and they're aware of the situation, we're expecting approvals when the final design is complete. We mentioned the construction bidding. Again, as the projects come in and the approvals are obtained, we don't necessarily have to bid them all at once, so we can spread that out. And so we're really expecting some of the projects to go out early in 2024, while others may be later in 2024. And then the town plan and DPW plan of action, the reminder there that also involves Bridgeport, the state of Connecticut, and to a little extent the town of Trumbull. Here's one of the maps that you might have seen from way back in 2018-19 when we first started hosting the meetings. These were the detention areas that the town had looked at. Unfortunately, two of them were outright eliminated in terms of that they just didn't have a benefit. It was less than a 1% improvement. And for the case in the Brooklawn Country Club, we would have had to redesign 2 tees, 2 greens. It probably would have been about $2 million, and we wouldn't even gotten a 0.5% improvement. So that site was turned away, but we did investigate it. And same thing with the Woodfield Village. There was less than 1% improvement. We did appreciate there was some initial talks with Woodfield Village in that they were willing to work with the town. But unfortunately, the storage there, they already have an existing detention pond, and to make it larger was going to be very difficult. And there was a couple of condos that are very close to the existing crest of the detention area. So that site was turned away or eliminated as well. And Melville Park, we have it as eliminated, but we still might do a smaller version for that site. The other sites are still in play. As we mentioned before, Tungus Hill Park. That one is in the permitting process. We call it the Senat property, but that's now Town of Fairfield. That's 150 Villa Avenue. Owen Fish Park and Fairchild Wheeler. And we can go into detail of each one of those. And here's, again, what was initially suggested. At the very, very beginning for Fairchild Wheeler, we actually only had one area, Area A. Then we said, well, maybe we can do Area B and C because this is at the top of the watershed and that we get the most bang for the buck. Because whatever we hold there gives the other areas plenty of reserve for additional flows that they can handle. So anything that we could hold back at the upper watershed is extremely important. As it turns out, Area C, unfortunately, that was very steep when we took a closer look at it. A very densely wooded, very steep area. And again, it didn't provide really any detention at all, so we had to take that one out. But there are 2 actual detention areas for the Fairchild Wheeler Golf Course, Area A and B. Tungus Hill Park, you can see there, it's the open space, or the wooded area there. And Owen Fish Park is an area there. In both of those, we had used the existing field area, and we tried to locate the detention areas as far away so that we wouldn't hamper any of the park and rec activities. Going back to the Fairchild Wheeler, as I mentioned before, we're doing areas A and B. This is our latest plan that was submitted for permit approvals. And kind of hard to see, but if you went way up to the top, that's one of the detention. Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, yeah. Oh, no, go back to that. That was good. All right. So, yeah, because we don't show the cursor on there, no. Okay. All right, but yeah, that area there, those are the two, the upper and the lower pond. And, we have a detention area there, proposed. A lot of people might not realize that, the, city of Bridgeport is the actual owner of the golf course. The area floods under current conditions, hence that's why we had to make the detention areas much larger. It's about a 4-foot average high berm. It ranges from 2, as you farther you go away from the stream, it's 2 foot high, and then right at the stream depth, because most channels are a couple of feet deep already, it's 8 feet deep there. At the edge of the wood and the extent of the culvert, we were trying to mitigate up to a 100-year flood event. Just for a footnote, which extended some of the permitting review, is both the Connecticut Deep and Army Corps of Engineers required 1,000-year storm analysis. So we had to have our consultants update and revise the plans for that. Almost everybody in the watershed benefits from these designs. It provides relief for Casimir Drive, Wynwood, Bennett and Bond neighborhood, Mill Allen, and even some of the downstream sections, Stratfield Road, and even Villa Avenue, Lynbrook, and even Rutland and Camden by I-95 there. All those neighborhoods benefit. If you look at the storage volume for the extra storage for a 10-year storm, 177%. If I recall from memory, it was approximately 29 to 43% for the 100-year storm. So this is by far the most critical and benefit detention area that we are proposing. The impact on residents. Megan and I met with several of the neighborhoods. We appreciated, we had 1 or 2 neighborhood spokesmen who helped spread the word. And if anybody is here from that, thank you very much for showing your interest again. Some of the things that are related to the project. So even though there's a benefit for everybody in the neighborhood, these projects, if you live extremely close to that area, there are some impacts, and so we are trying to do our best to lessen those. There will be removal of trees due to the dam or the berm construction. According to DEP, they made it a condition that there's no trees that are to be planted within 25 feet of the base of the dam. No plantings or landscaping on the dam or the berm, as we call it. But we would investigate mitigation measures. When meeting with the neighborhood, a lot of them had concerns about golf balls in this particular area, and certainly we can do periphery landscaping. Similar to the Tungus Hill, but to a lesser degree. And as I mentioned before, we had met with the neighborhood on that. These aspects are still included in the design, but haven't been finalized yet. And that's just another view of the mitigation plan, where we have to now plant all sorts of wetland plantings as part of the permit. And the fencing too, thanks for reminding me of that. Now we go to Tungus Hill Park. That's the same slide you saw before. This is just an example of where the berm, you can see all those grade lines. That's essentially the berm that's going to trap all the water, and all the different colors of the different storms that were related. So again, we have storage up to 1,000-year storm on these particular projects. And again, you can see Tungus Hill, it's 77% for the 10-year storm. So there's still significant improvement for this. And there's just a little recap rather than go through every single one. But you can, it's very similar to the golf course situation. Yep, the 1,000-year storm. And again, we got the one permit, we're waiting for the others. And then now at Owen Fish, this is the one that would be to the outfield, left field in the big baseball field. That's there. It's just before or sort of adjacent to the existing pond that's there. And again, Owen Fish is owned by the town. We're looking at a berm, an average of 3 foot high. It may vary. There might be some spots that are 2, and maybe at the deepest it might be 4 feet. At the edge of the outfield, we probably have to include some under drain system. We would daylight the existing channel that's underground right now to for environmental improvements. Most likely that would be a condition of approval anyway. This would provide flood relief during various storms. And again, the neighborhoods that would benefit are anywhere down from Brookview Avenue, Strathfield Road, Woodside Circle, Westbrook Place, Westwood, and even the nearby condos at Strathmore and Dogwood, and various downstream locations would benefit as well. We're expecting the final design to be completed in fall of 2023 or spring of 2024. The anticipated timelines. Now, this is for the smaller detention and storm system projects. These are ones that I've met with the neighborhood before. Little Brook is one example, and there are a couple of other ones where we are getting benefits from the detention areas, but these are more micro, they're smaller neighborhood projects that we'll be working with DPW to either construct or put out to bid. For the most of the projects there, we'll be acquiring all state and federal permits. The 100% design would be in January 2024, and as I mentioned before, hopefully we can start construction spring of 24 with the end of construction in 2025. And that includes the detention ponds, the bigger projects as well. Phase 2, that's the existing drainage at 150 Villa Avenue, the newly acquired open space. The drainage system there is almost 100 years old. It's from the WPA days. They constantly clog. We call a request from our contractor to clean the pipes again. Seems like every major storm we have to have them go out there. So by taking out the pipe for at least maybe half of that section, that would eliminate clogging possibilities and let the land absorb some of that runoff that goes through those pipes. We'd be able to create a wetland and water quality basin, and that would help provide some upstream flooding relief at Algonquin Road. We're also investigating installing a bypass system, which would transport some of the runoff away from Pequot and Algonquin intersection and create a small neighborhood detention basin. I wish we could do that for a lot of different neighborhoods, but unfortunately, if you just enlarge pipes for, say, your neighborhood, well, the people downstream are going to get bombed out. So we have to balance it out. That also happens to be the case with bridge projects. A lot of times we're asked, can we widen the bridge and do this and that? Again, regulations and legislation and the laws there prevent us from doing harm downstream. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll improve as best we can without harming downstream and try to reduce the clogging, because anybody that knows, depending on especially what time of the year the storms come, you could get leaf, branch, litter. If that blocks our catch basins or head walls, even though DPW goes out and cleans over 200 of them before a predicted storm, sometimes an hour later they could get clogged and they have to go back out again. Obviously, they can't go back there every hour. This is just a draft. I just wanted to show you, some of the proposals that are being considered for this. But it's only a draft and preliminary. That certainly when we get a little bit more advanced, and if the bypass proposal works, we'll definitely share it with everybody at the next meeting or individually if this area of concern for you. For October, we're expected completion. This is for the Villa Avenue now. So hopefully in a month or two, we can design the completion. Sorry. The design could be completed and the IWPA permit would be submitted. That process usually takes 2, at most 3 months. Again, it would be, it's on the conservation radar already. We've had preliminary discussions about this project with Tim Bishop, who couldn't be here tonight. And then again, being that the permit process is much easier for this one, we expect the project to be completed next year. Okay, for phase 3 is dredging. Right now, the initial stage is to dredge from Brook 1 to North Avenue or Kings Highway, so Route 59 to Route 1. Okay, yeah, if you can see it, there's a blue line there. The length of the channel is 3,300 feet. The channel is 38 feet to the bottom, and we would be excavating 1 to 2 feet of sediment, recreating the 1960s channel. That is there. That's our hope. We have done some preliminary testing. It's non-hazardous sediment, but it does exceed Connecticut DEP threshold limits. So that will require us to do the proper disposal, and we would have to get permits for this project as well. We hope, again, this is just a schedule so people know we'll keep on moving forward here. Fall 2023, we expect the bathymetric survey, which is basically a survey of the existing conditions right now for the river. We have some information back in the 1960s, so we'll compare the two, and that will be our proposal. As I said, in most cases, that will involve 1 to 2 feet of excavation. In most of the cross sections that were done in the 60s, the height of the dike or berm was about 10 feet from the bottom of the river to the top. So if we can take out 1 or 2 feet, that's going to be roughly, just simple math, 10 to 20% improvement for everybody that lives there. Who is responsible for the Rooster River maintenance and its tributaries? Outside of a few cases where the town actually owns property that abuts the river, most of the river is privately owned, and that's something some of the people, the public, might not realize. Property owners are responsible for river cleanups, but with pre-approval, and this was done at, Brenda had mentioned, I know she was there, at the cleanup a couple of years ago, that if they were to take out, let's just say take out a tire and something out of the river there, if you call ahead of time or you do it as a neighborhood group, a neighborhood cleanup, you contact the DPW and they will come and pick it up as long as you bring it to the curb. Because again, they can't go on private property. And again, unfortunately, we have to make sure that the debris comes from the river. You know, we're not going to take somebody's dishwasher, if you know what I mean. And people try it, believe me, when the storm happened last time. So, for the past 20 years, this is another note that people might not be aware of. For the past 20 years, Fairfield DPW has converted from sand to salt-based solution for the snow removal methods. And so that has helped reduce some of the sediment, certainly the last 20 years in Rooster River and its tributaries, and even throughout the whole town system. This one here, we had a recent complaint by the Strathmore condo. We did investigate. We had an engineer go underneath and check for any impediments through the proper methods, and we found that there were no direct impediments underneath the culvert that the town's responsible for, and that would be underneath Fairfield Woods Road. We did notice a wall collapsing. Ironically, about a week or two before this picture, and I think it was a day or two before I did go on vacation, I did notice that the wall was cracked, and then look, in 2 weeks, now that's become somewhat of an impediment. So we'll be contacting the property owner, which I believe is the bank, and to have them repair the wall there, because obviously we don't want that going downstream or causing a blockage. And unfortunately, the same thing is with the condos. We did some deed research just to update. The channel is completely on the condo property and would be their responsibility. Again, wetlands, talking to our conservation director, they're in favor. They would most likely approve the permit, provided that it's standard methods, means and methods of removal. But unfortunately, you'd have to go through Connecticut law and town regulations. You do have to go for a permit on that. And I believe, I don't know if anyone's here from Dogwood Green. I know they have a proposal to dredge or remove the sediment that's in their pond. So all these things hopefully will help the watershed as well. We kind of went over some of these, but I'll go over them really quick. What are the anticipated challenges? We talked about the DEP. One thing I wanted to mention is if somebody does see a notice in the paper, you have every right to obviously comment, but if you comment and thinking that you're helping the situation, it's the opposite. Believe it or not, any comments that they receive, even if they're relatively positive for our case, it will delay the project. So be very careful. If you feel you have to comment, I can't prevent you from doing it, but if you think that that's going to expedite the project, I've been told that it unfortunately does the opposite, so please keep that in mind. Connecticut DEP, we talked about these permits and the Army Corps of Engineer permits. Brenda alluded to obtaining easements, and we have some forms that people want to fill out, because that will certainly expedite what we can do. A reminder to residents and businesses to don't dump debris on the riverbank. A lot of people will do their clippings and landscaping, and then even as we learned out with some of these intense storms, if you have lawn chairs or something on the top of the dike, it might be nice on a nice sunny day and you have some shade. There is some wildlife in there, but in the same token, if the next day, if we know it's going to be heavy rain, those things wash and could block downstream culverts. So please keep that in mind with anything, floatable that could harm downstream. As we dredge or as we do the sediment removal, there'll be more permits that we have to obtain. And as I said before, we are working with the city of Bridgeport on that. And then lastly, the multi-phase approach and the cost. Luckily, we've been fortunate where we've got $6.5 million to get this project going. We won't know exactly, we do have some estimates, but we won't know exactly how much everything costs until we put them out to bid. And just bear with me, I think I have 2 more slides. So. What can we do together to mitigate flooding? Again, this is pretty much a recap. Don't dump, sign your easements, remove obstacles. This is one, especially for that little tributary of the ditch behind Nordstrom. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't even go and remove the debris. There was some spots where I couldn't even walk to. There's fences, trees, there's shopping carts, there's shrubs. So if there's a way that we can get the easement and DPW can get in there, that will be extremely helpful. A reminder again to fix private walls, not just at the bank, but there were some other walls that are going to need repair very soon. That we hope you fix them. And then again, public support and letters. This is where you could help by, even if you complain, I'm tired of getting flooded, but I really appreciate the town's efforts, or please do something about this. That might help us get some more grant money. And we have some state delegation here. And, any letters of support we'll keep on file, and we do submit them as part of the grant application. And also, some of the other things to mention, we have the Fairfield Flood and Erosion and Resiliency Board and the plan of conservation development that we can, those are resources that we could use. If items are listed, especially on the plan of conservation development or even the HAZ mitigation, which was a meeting at the library last week on that. If they're listed, a lot of times when we go for the grants, if they're listed, that gives us a better chance of obtaining more grant money. And then lastly is just a follow-up. My email, Mega's email is here. I'm pretty sure you can email. I don't want to volunteer you and your staff. But thank you, and we're here to answer any questions. The only thing I would say is if it's really something totally specific, I'm willing to wait after the meeting. We do have some plans. It wouldn't be fair just to show you slides. If you're an engineer or you're really concerned of what the plans look like, we have them rolled up here and you can review them. But for the sake of the audience, to give everybody a chance to speak, we can do that after. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. So, as you can see, the town has been working hard on this plan, this mitigation plan. Unfortunately, as you can tell with the permitting, there's a couple of issues with that. The fact that a lot of the big departments in the state of Connecticut have huge turnover because they had a lot of people retire. Department of Transportation, Department of Environmental Protection. So you have a lot of turnover. In addition to the fact we're not the only town that got ARPA funding, so there's applications, all up there. So it's been a little frustrating that we had to modify some of our plans. For example, the Tungus Hill detention pond, they wanted us to put it directly in the middle of the field. So we had to go back and forth on that with them. But so we're hoping that in the next 60 days we'll get their first permit and we can start pulling the trigger on this. But I wanted to kind of do a Phil Donahue thing. Those of you who are probably my age or older know who Phil Donahue is. And I thought I'd just, if you just want to raise your hand and you want to ask a question.
Oh, behind you. Do you mind can I add a couple comments first that might help with questions?
Sure, go right ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
I thought you'd like to answer questions.
No, I know. Thank you so much for hosting this forum here, and thanks to all the residents who have joined us tonight. I'm State Rep. Kristen McCarthy-Bakey, as the first Selectwoman said earlier. And just as I listen, based on some of the conversations that I've had with people, I just wanted to add a few things before we get to questions that might hopefully answer some of the questions. I know there have been a lot of questions about the Owen Fish Pond in particular, or detention, and I want to thank you for, letting us know that one, though it's on a little bit of a delayed timeline, that it is still moving forward, and that there were some additional hurdles that you had to overcome because of that one. Also, just from a funding source standpoint, the project total coming from the federal ARPA dollars, we also have received $750,000 from Bridgeport, who's contributing to the detention pond part. The $2.5 million is a state grant, and the only reason I mention those things is because as we go forward to the comments that were made earlier, how we can best advocate. There are going to be multiple pools of funding, so sometimes people will say, email all your RTM reps or email your state delegation. We'll want to be strategic about who we're emailing when, depending on those sources of funding, which is why I mentioned that. I have been so grateful for the coordination with Bridgeport. I now represent Fairfield and Bridgeport. Bridgeport is poised to receive about $42 million for the Oxbrook area. They don't have that money in hand yet. We don't quite have the $2.5 million in hand, but we are guaranteed to get it at least as reimbursement at a minimum. The $42 million is not quite at that phase of approval yet, but we know already that the town and city engineers are working together. When the first Selectwoman and I talked about this forum, I had shared with her that subsequent to this, we will host a regional forum so that we can bring together the city and town and also bring in the people from DEEP who will come also and answer some questions about that. So just know that if you have questions about what's happening right on the other side, because water doesn't care about political boundaries, and that's happening. I just wanted to note, and perhaps you can answer this as a question too, the comments about DEEP and the water quality permit and what Mr. Hurley is saying about public comment. I don't think anyone is trying to discourage you from participating, questioning, asking. I think we can go directly to Bill and to Mega and ask questions about the project. That slide in particular is basically saying if DEEP, Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, gets a formal public comment from one of us, they will be required to go through a process to review that, which is why that comment is made. It doesn't mean that you can't come to the people here, make comments, ask questions. Certainly, those comments, but I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And I think that's it. Hopefully that's helpful. And I think
thank you very much for holding this very timely update. Board of Selectmen and town engineer and DPW is going to fix all these roads after you dig them up, right? But I think it's important, it's urgent to recognize that we talked about the 100-year storm. The problem is we're having them every 5 years. And this is a real urgent necessity. But it's a very complicated one. Bill, I mean, in your presentation, it's important to note that it's kind of a multi-pronged approach. And it includes not only Fairfield and Bridgeport, but also Trumbull as well. And that kind of multi-pronged kind of collaboration takes a lot of effort. I think we're very fortunate that we are talking to our Bridgeport colleagues. We'll be reaching out after this meeting to our Trumbull colleagues. But I think it's important to note that we are all rowing in the same direction. And that's critical. But there also needs to be a tremendous sense of urgency to try to address this issue. We've known about these issues for years and years. But I think what's happened is with this significance of climate change, of rising sea levels and these volatile and sudden storms, that we're seeing damages to our community at a rate that we're not accustomed to. And so these kind of remediations, they've been in the plans. I've been in the legislature long enough. We've talked about these, but it requires a lot of moving pieces. And I'm appreciative of the work of Bill and explaining it. We know the pieces. Now we got to get to work. And we are more advanced than other communities in our permitting process. And that's a plus. So we're ready to go in the same place. And there is a sense of urgency in us going in the same direction, Democrat, Republicans in this. But I also want to give a big shout out. This $5 million is a large part due to the tireless effort of Representative McCarthy-Vahey. I serve as the ranking leader on the bonding subcommittee, and I was familiar with it, obviously very supportive, knew what Bridgeport was asking, but a lot of credit needs to go to Representative McCarthy-Vahey for truly advocating it because you represent both of the towns, and you spoke very clearly and effectively to get that money. What we also talked about while Bill was kind of presenting was that with our permitting, with us collaborating with Bridgeport and Trumbull and getting the process in place, that we could also tap into the federal Inflation Reduction Act money, in which the state of Connecticut received nearly $5 billion of infrastructure money that's being managed by former Danbury Mayor Mark Boughton, who is the Commissioner of Revenue Services, but is also in charge of Connecticut Built, which allocates projects. And one of the things that I've talked to him many times is the fact projects that are permitted and shovel ready are ones that are going to get the favorable consideration of supplemental money. And I'm very encouraged through the good work of a lot of the people that were here today that we are near that permitting process, considering that we can prod along deep to move it along with us, that we are all going in the same direction. But it's complicated. You're going to have personal property right infringements. You're going to have golfers that may not be happy about changing the route of the course. But nevertheless, I truly believe that this is a urgent and necessary process to ensure that this community and property owners and businesses and economic impact is persevered and preserved. So I appreciate you doing this, but I wanted to acknowledge the good efforts of Representative McCarthy-Vahey, but also I would dare say the entire delegation in cooperation with Trumbull and Bridgeport needs to work together to get this done because this benefits everybody. Because the water doesn't know any borders, doesn't know any direction. So thank you for doing this. We're here to offer our support and
Thank you, Senator. And so, I appreciate both of that. And I have been, obviously in contact with Mayor Ganem throughout since I took over, and we have been collaborating on other projects as well. The Bridgeport is very crucial to our connection because of the boundary that we share. But again, as Tony brought up, these plants have been sitting on the waterfall a long time. You can't apply for permits unless you have the money, for a project. They don't permit a project you don't have the money for. So I'm very glad that I was able to put that funding forward. I know it seems like forever, but we are really working hard. We do care about this, and it does matter. So I just want to open it up to anyone.
Hi, everyone. I just have a question about Horse Tavern Brook. That was on the map, but it wasn't sort of the, mitigation plan. And so I was wondering, that floods very frequently. I live on the road. You can probably guess that. And my attention is directed to that, but it frequently floods. It just wasn't on the, any of the plans. I know there's a lot of different areas that flood. And so I was wondering if there's any consideration given to the flooding there, and if so, what that is.
Try it this way. There you go. Yes, we have looked at Horse Tavern Brook, but believe it or not, for the town of Fairfield, our options are limited. If you go from the Rooster River and go all the way up Horse Tavern Brook, outside of that little park area, that Brook Lawn Parkway, the town we don't own any property there. So what we are proposing to work with Bridgeport. I believe, in the map that we showed before, and Mega may know a little bit more. Yeah. That she'll know what the one in Bridgeport, but there is at least a detention pond in Bridgeport that's being proposed.
So you see this project area where I'm highlighting. This is the one that they are proposing to control. That because it's Horse Tavern Brook, and that person is coming all the way to. Okay, so you see this above the red line, there is a tributary coming. Let me see how I can show you. 1 minute. So you see this project area where this is? This is the one that will be capturing the upstream of the Horse Tavern Brook. So this is from the Bridgeport area. This is the Bridgeport area. So they're proposing this. And then as you come down, that tributary, that's the Horse Tavern Brook. So they are proposing an upstream detention system to control, and then you come down to Fairfield area where we are proposing a Fairchild area for a detention system.
Yeah, one
technically this Horse Tavern Brook comes from the Bridgeport. Yeah.
So wait a minute, could you elaborate? So is Bridgeport putting a detention pond into that area? I know you've been working with their engineers, but are they proposing to use some of their ARPA money to impact that area?
That the ARPA money or the upcoming money?
No, or
the upcoming money that Kristen had mentioned.
Oh, with the 2.5?
No, the 42 million.
What?
The 42 million.
The $42 million.
Oh, the Bridgeport we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. And I'll just do a little service announcement. For those of you in the audience, we're going to ask you to use a microphone because FairTV is recording this. We want to make sure that everyone watching is going to be able to hear you. So that's why hopefully you'll wait till the first Selectwoman gives you the microphone. So the Bridgeport projects right now, their focus is on Oxbrook, which is down below. I don't know, Mega, if you can do that.
Yes,
The red map.
This one over here, this Oxbrook is here. This is the project that we're talking about.
So that's the thing that's really difficult, as the first Selectwoman said. Some of these projects have been kind of underway and in conversation for over a decade. So right now, I have also been working with and talking with the city engineers. We had a meeting last week with Connecticut Deep, which is, again, why we're going to, we wanted to start with this and then have that regional conversation, because some of that work will impact you, and we'll make sure that the city engineers and the folks from Deep can more specifically answer. But at least I can tell you that there is currently funding, and I don't know the sources of it and exactly how much that is being put towards the work with Oxbrook. That $42 million, as Senator Wong said, we have a bond commission, and money has to get approved by the bond commission. So the $2.5 million that we have for Fairfield has already been approved by the state bond commission, but that $42 million, which is actually over a period of couple of years, that has not gone through the bond commission process yet, which means Bridgeport, because the way it works in Connecticut is money goes directly to the municipalities. So that $2.5 million goes straight to Fairfield. Those monies will go to Bridgeport. Even though we'll work together, ultimately Bridgeport will have to apply for the permits and do the bidding and go through that process. So I know that's a long answer, but just know that the conversations are continuing. But when it comes to getting that money approved through the bond commission, even though it's going to go to Bridgeport, that's where we're going to probably be looking to some of you to help us advocate for pushing that through, because it will benefit both communities.
Thank you. And just to be clear, the 3.2 million that the town allocated is for this phase 1 portion. We intend to use the 2.5 for the phase 2, and God willing, we get some of that 41 million to be able to expand upon what we have. She's asking about the federal dollars that you were talking about.
It's called CT Built. What I'll do is I will follow up with the First Selectwoman's office and get the website for it. But nevertheless, it's kind of interesting, right? We talk about getting the permit first to get the money, and most of the state agencies I've talked to says get the permitting done, and then the money will be ready to flow. So we've got to communicate a little bit better, but definitely, I know Fairfield is way ahead of other municipalities in regards to permitting. This is a long-standing project. We have some very talented people that have worked very hard. But the bottom line is, we need to be ready to make the ask. And one of the things that I've just spoken with Representative Kupchick is to invite Mr. Boughton for a site visit and present how far along we have, how critical this is to the community from a personal property protection, but also economics, and to provide infrastructure not only for now, but into the sustainable future. Because I'm extremely concerned that climate change will wreak further havoc that more than we've ever anticipated. And the plan that you just saw is anticipating that to be able to create solutions. But it's going to be challenges. But long story short, we're going to move forward quickly.
Can we do anything as a community to help you get that money? Can we write? What can we do?
I'm going to chime in. So grants are really tricky. So with every federal law that's passed, and with the grants that Senator Wong is talking about, there are certain categories where we do or don't qualify. So this is also true at the state level. Sometimes it's not that way. Sometimes the 42 million, the 2.5 million, those are communities saying, hey, we need the funds, and the state is saying, we'll do this. The ARPA dollars, we had to make sure that we were following certain things to be able to use the money. So what Senator Wong's suggesting, which I think is excellent, is having Mr. Boughton come here and assess what our needs are and talk to us. And obviously we're going to do that in conjunction with the First Selectwoman's office. And then we'll let you know. That's where, all of us as your elected leaders at every level, we have our RTM reps here. Some of our reps from the district, Reps Ezema, Collier, and Carson are here. So sometimes, local dollars are never going to be enough to cover this. We will never, as a community, be able to pay for this alone. So sometimes it is about writing to your RTM reps. That's not where we are. We're not in a place where we're specifically saying we need your advocacy, but once we've been able to talk with them, then we may be able to. Sometimes there are things, federal earmarks, we're not allowed to use that term. It's congressionally directed spending. We did apply for that for another project in town.
So that's why I know I'm kind of getting into the weeds, but that's helped you to understand how to best advocate. In this case, really, it's Senator Wong suggesting for us to work as leaders.
So what I definitely want to make sure we get enough people to ask questions. So the 2.5 million is, as you've seen, everything that is associated with the 2.5 million. The catch basins, we're permitting, we're ready to get moving on that. And then we will move toward phase 2 with the 2.5 that we've done. And then again, I send out a newsletter every 2 weeks. Sometimes people say put too much information in it, but I try to put a lot of information in it, and I do keep up to date with what's happening with Rooster River, what's happening here, what's happening there. And if there is opportunities for our community to, believe me, I will be the one yelling the loudest to get us as much money as possible, because this isn't just an issue in the Rooster River area. We have flooding going on all throughout the town. To Tony's point, the rain events, they're flooding areas that used to not flood. They're just coming so quickly. Our sewers cannot handle it. And people who really never got flooded before. Well, we have issues down in the beach area too with flooding. We have flooding kind of pretty much all around. But the Rooster River area has been a problem for a very long time. Does anyone over here have any questions?
So is there something our state representatives can do to push these permits, from which we've been hearing about, waiting over a year now? So is there, how can we get the feds to move this along quicker?
Absolutely, and I'll kick it over to Representative McCarthy-Vahey, who just mentioned earlier she's had a meeting with DEEP. But again, a unified front rowing the same direction can only help. So she'll clarify a little bit, but absolutely, it's our role to be your voice and communicate, because sometimes they can get stuck in the weeds.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And if people are willing to introduce themselves, that would be awesome too. I want to give a lot of credit to Mr. Hurley. And I did actually say to Mr. Hurley and Ms. Jane that we are happy to, if they are running into obstacles, reach out and try and push. I say it's like taking different roads. I met with DEEP, which is the state agency, again, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, with some folks from Bridgeport. And I did actually speak to them about some of these issues. Right now, though, from my understanding, from what Bill has said to us, where we are with some of the first projects, it's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And again, we can also reach out and talk to our federal partners, as the First Selectwoman's office does as well, to help push that along. The frank answer is sometimes it helps and sometimes it doesn't move the needle, but we always will do whatever we can to keep that conversation moving.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, to Representative McCarthy-Vahey's point, the Army Corps of Engineers said to us, they have up to a year, and it is a year. So, we have been, prodding. We're not obnoxious about it, but we're prodding and checking in. So November is when we're expecting to get sign off from them. So, we're ready to go, and we feel like this is all going to start to come together now that we put all this work in and the permits are moving through the process. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Hi, Keith Bradley. Bill, two questions and then a potential issue. What's the time frame for this all to be accomplished? And then when it's accomplished, given we know what happens in these big storms, what are the percent chances that we're going to be able to have that it's going to be mitigated and we won't have the flooding? I'm asking for 1, 2, and 3. What's the overall time frame?
Yeah, the overall time frame, as I alluded to in the slides there.
There's a slide I have for the phase 1 anticipated timeline. This is the phase 1 based on 2009.
So my question, I guess, is in spring of 2025, what is the percent chance that we're going to have successful mitigation of the kind of storm that we had in 2018?
For the storm that we had in 2018, you will see some improvements, But again, you got to keep in mind, again, we can't design for a storm that dropped just over the town line, 8 inches in 4 hours. The detention pond would be bigger than this whole high school complex, 10 feet deep. I mean, we can't do that. All we can do is use the area that's available to us, and every detention area here will improve the situation. Where perhaps if you got a foot of flooding, maybe now you don't get flooding. If you had 2 feet of flooding, maybe it gets reduced to 1 foot. There's a possibility of, well, geez, I got flooded 4 times in the last 20 years. Maybe now it's only once. So it's going to be a combination. It depends where you are. The only thing is that through engineering standards, by holding the water, much like these detention ponds act as reservoirs, by holding back the water, that's preventing that water from going downstream at the worst, time when everything else is going on. So holding back the water, even if we let it go 6 hours, 24 hours later, when the storm systems or the river banks can handle it, will make it an improvement. How much, I honestly can't tell you, and Brenda mentioned before, this is, even all this stuff, I don't know if it's going to solve it all, because it's just so much, but you'll definitely see improvements, and hopefully less flooding or less occurrence of flooding.
So one of the things that potential, there are communities that are looking at physical barriers that can be put out on a short notice to be able to do that. And it's done by the buying power of the community as opposed to individuals trying to buy them. And I'm just thinking that's something we might want to think about, because that's something to be done in the very near term.
Keith, if I may, just quickly, I want to acknowledge your efforts. You've led cleanup to clear debris and blockages of the various river, and you've been tremendous. And if I may, to offer for us as a community sometimes the frustration with being somewhat helpless. The little things that we can do to join your annual cleanup, to clean up the river, to clear the debris, and to increase the water flow. That might be a pathway that we can do little to kind of increase that passage, because having been at one of your cleanups, it's remarkable the stuff that we've taken out of the river. And these are things that we can do as community to say, hey, maybe we clean up the river to increase the water flow so it doesn't back up at strategic points, and that we kind of reclaim the river as well for its cleanliness. So I want to do a shout out to your efforts, and I look forward to being able to be at the next cleanup to clear the river and debris more. But it's little things that we can do individually as a community to make a difference as well.
That I will share with Bill. Apparently we have people going into our 150 Villa Avenue property, so we need to put a lock on it, on the gate, please. Do you have a question, sir? You look like you want to say something. Do you have a question? Okay. It's going to get locked.
Yeah, I did hear.
Thank you, Phil. Kevin Stark from the Board of Finance. But I have a question as a homeowner who lives right on the river. I'm on Stratfield, and from my property map, there seems to be a strip of land behind my property that actually adjoins the river. And I've always wondered, whose is that? Does that belong to the town or the state, or is there a kind of an easy answer?
We can find that out. If you want to just give us the exact address, I don't know if you want to make it public or not. Just let us know and we'll look into it for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, my name is Michael Cripps. I actually live in the Strathmore condos, and this is probably a question we need to figure out after, because it's probably involved, but the situation over there is unique because the condo association does not actually own that property. We are on a land lease. So I sit on the board, and I would be happy to help you figure out if you have the temporary easement or not. I can try and facilitate getting that figured out and whatever else you might need. So I could be in touch after the meeting.
There, Sue Olson on Little Brook Road. Just a personal thanks to Bill Hurley, who's gotten many of my long voicemails. But I had a question about the detention basins. Who is going to be responsible for the maintenance of them once they are created? Because I know we've experienced issues from private property with lack of maintenance of those basins. So is there anyone who can answer what that proposal will be so they are maintained and we have a guarantee that this great system is put in place, but who's going to maintain it?
Yeah, sure, I can answer that, Sue. For the ones that the town of Fairfield owns, it would be the town of Fairfield, and it would most likely be the DPW with cooperation of our conservation staff, because again, some of them are considered in wetland soil, so we'd have to work together on that. The city of Bridgeport and the town of Fairfield for the Fairchild Wheeler Golf Course actually have a maintenance agreement in place. And the maintenance agreement in place is that daily maintenance would be maintained by the city of Bridgeport. If something structural comes, it would be a 50-50 split. So thank you and good question.
Thank you, Brenda. First of all, I want to say, I'm Liz Esma, by the way. I'm one of the 4 RTM representatives for District 4. If anyone does not know me, please feel free to reach out. Marcy Spoliar is my colleague sitting here next to me. So first of all, thank you to everyone here and those behind the scenes who have done so much work to get us to this point. Another shout out to Kristen for the money she secured and the President's administration for the ARPA funds. Bill, I have 2 questions. One, just for clarity for people at Strathmore. That culvert kind of straddles private property and state property. Can you just confirm for that community in terms of cleaning out that portion of London's Brook what is permissible?
Well, we had our surveyor research, and he was able to find a filed map at the town clerk's office. I believe the date was 1999 by a licensed surveyor that shows the complete channel is on what we consider condo property. And so that's why we've come up with a determination that it's private. And then that's why we also, though, realizing that the culvert, which is, we call that a channel. That's the rectangular channel, like a trapezoid. The rectangular type channel that you can't see unless you go inside is underneath Fairfield Woods Road. And we did have someone go out there and take a look at it. And then there's no obstructions for that. But while we were doing that, along with John and Tim Bishop, they did notice the wall, as I said, just a couple weeks earlier, there was nothing wrong, but a slight crack had fallen in. So we'll be making a note to them to clean it up as well.
Great, thank you. And then my second question is just for ease of everyone's access, where on the website, on the town site, can they find updates on Rooster River? I've checked in the engineering section, but missed it.
I can talk on this. We are in a process of changing it to the new format of the website, so I'm working on it, and as soon as it is ready, maybe in a couple of 2 weeks, I would say, and that will be available on our engineering website or Rooster River project updates, and easements are also on Rooster River. There is a separate column for that.
Great, thank you very much. I'll follow up. Thank you, Bill.
And I want to thank Mega. She's the one that put together the slide presentation. She helps me out with the engineering designs and the reviews. So thank you, Mega.
Yeah, just to elaborate, you know, and you brought up that good point, and I hope you do email me. So I did ask, I had somebody from the association email me regarding that area. And I asked Tim and Bishop, our conservation director, and Bucky Marsilio to go take a look at it. Bill had been out there before, but it had been wet and he couldn't like go in there because it was water, but just to see what's going on in there. So we're going to try to figure that out. And I just appreciate the patience. We have been working for a long time to get our town a brand new website. I don't know if you're familiar with our website. It's really lousy and it's hard to maneuver around. And so we finally were able to get the funding for that, but it has been I had no idea the amount of work it takes to, get a new website. I mean, all of the departments have to put so much effort into designing their information, uploading it. It's not like easy at all. I thank Megan, I thank all of our departments, and we're really committed, right?
Yes, we are.
We're trying to get there.
Very
So
worried about
hang
that.
tight.
Great. Hi, I'm Sunil Purushottam. I live on Edgewood Place. So I'd like to thank you all, Representative McCarthy for getting the funding, Senator Wong for your sort of call to urgency. I think that is a sentiment shared by pretty much everybody, especially after seeing what's happened in Vermont and even just last night in Massachusetts, the states of emergency being declared. So I think future is the flooding. Flooding is the future, however we want to put it. And thank you, Bill, for, dealing with my long emails and other types of rants. Edgewood Place floods frequently in any sort of heavy rainstorm, but it is not included in part of the Rooster River. It's not listed as an affected street in the Rooster River plan. So basically, I am here to sort of inform you that places are flooding that are not being accounted for, and that I hope my, fondest sort of wildest dream is that sense of urgency is not dissipated or satisfied with the sort of current projects at hand. That, we're not simply saying, oh, we've done the Rooster River, it's all over and sorted, and moving on. So I just wanted, and I know, Bill, there's studies taking place, but, there's a lot of local knowledge out there. We know how water moves in our neighborhoods. And so I hope that there is more study being done, and, that hopefully some of this money allocated for the Rooster River watershed could, be used to address issues that are in the affected area, but not listed as affected in the sort of official report.
Yeah,
Right.
just so you know, we had one slide on there where we said minor or smaller neighborhoods and storm system improvements, because your area,
Right.
Hugh's area,
Right.
they're not quite, you do get indirect benefits from the detention ponds, because obviously the lower level of the Rooster River allows all the storm systems that get tied into the river to flow more freely. When the pipe is down here, say, I'm just gonna make up a number, elevation 10, but the river's at elevation 15, it's very hard to get that water to flow. But with the detention, if we're able to now bring that Rooster River level down, say to 9, well, then you'll get the benefit.
Right. So I agree that if we have less coming down, then maybe we can have more going out. But, and I understand the complication of, like, if we increase capacity in my neighborhood, somebody downstream is going to get bombed. But, we are also downstream, so we are getting bombed from the neighborhoods upstream, which tend to be comprised of much larger.
As I said, you'll get some indirect benefits, and then just real quick would be your situation there, where there is a pipe that's larger than yours, and yours is relatively smaller, that we would be able to enlarge your pipe without damaging downstream.
Great.
So that is one of those cases that we talked about.
And in terms
we're looking at that.
Great, thank you, and I appreciate that. And I'll keep on sending videos of every time it rains. And so one other thing I wanted to say is about the slide about what we can do. Do you think we should do more to be encouraging people to reduce the impermeable, surface area in their properties and stuff like that? I live in an area that floods frequently, but I'm the only person with a gravel driveway in my neighborhood, right? So I'm wondering if we can ask people more to do more, or are we going to have more complex private landowners being asked to do, not maybe forced to do things, but maybe encouraged to do more than merely sort of write letters. Which
Yeah, we can do that. There's a program with the DEP called MS4, and we have to do a public education outreach. We've done that a couple of years. We had over 1,000 brochures. I probably should have brought them here. I think we're down though. We might have run out of them by now. But where we would alert the public just for that. But thanks for reminding me. You can certainly, like I said, on the new website, put out those type of messages. And certainly when you're talking to your neighbors or whatever, and it could be anything from trying to keep pervious surfaces or and you know, grass clippings, you know, all that kind of stuff. Anything that would help the environment usually helps water quality and quantity.
I have two suggestions. I mean, so one suggestion, we see people putting stuff into the street to be washed into the storm drains on purpose all the time. Lawn clippings, leaves. I don't know what the war on leaves is, but it's real. And they end up in the drains. So, my final, I've lost my point in my rant about leaves, is, yeah, I guess I'll just leave it there. But,
may I respond, Madam First Selectwoman? I can say that as long as I've been elected and as long as I have the privilege to continue serving, I will not lose the sense of urgency. And you've heard that from Senator Wong as well.
can I say, is there a chance to add neighborhoods to the official report? To the affected areas, like if, you know, because we did the study.
Yeah,
These solutions have been designed with those affected areas. Like, so can we get a street added to the report?
Yeah, and again, the purpose of this and why we were concentrating on these major detention areas, because they're the bang for the buck for the 3,000 residents that get flooded. And we also knew way back even last year that this permit process was going to take anywhere from, you know, 8 months to 12 months. We knew this was going to happen, so that's why we concentrated on that stuff first. Some of the smaller storm systems may require an inland wetland permit, but usually they don't require those federal or state permits, and so we could do that. And certainly to add it onto a proposal of, you know, something storm related rather than just right. Yeah. No. Yeah. We could do that anytime. Yep.
And to the earlier point, you know, we have flooding all across the town in areas that never flooded, right? Because I mean, look at on Sunday, that rain came down really fast, and you know, we have areas that have, and since I took office 4 years ago, people calling me saying I'm flooding, and I never flooded before. We have sewers that are not built for this population. And you're right. They're just not. When we get that, to Bill's point, that hard, heavy, lots of rain, everybody just goes, you see the sewers, they're bubbling. So I think that your point about we have a sustainable task force in town, I don't know if you're familiar with it. I do post a lot of their information in my newsletter. And I love your idea about the gravel driveway, because as a matter of fact, my driveway is really old, like really old. And my husband's like, we need to pave the driveway. And I just said to him the other day, you know, we should gravel the driveway because we're getting water all of a sudden now the last few years in our garage. And so I think it's a smart idea and it's something we should share. Lisa Wexler on WICC talks about it all the time too. She's really interested in the gravel driveway.
May I just
Let me just make sure there's no one back here that wants to ask anything.
Madam First Selectwoman, may I finish just responding to the rest of the...
Go ahead.
I just want to finish responding to that, and I know you wanted to finish your thought, but just something that a lot of people say is, oh, all the new development is making this worse. The work that we're doing is to address the mistakes that were made in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and that we didn't know. We buried the river. Water always wins. And I actually want to really thank you, First Selectwoman, for saying, and Bill said this in answers, what these projects are doing are a start to flood mitigation. They in no way alone will eliminate the problem, and also, in addition, other projects and increasing the amount of money we spend, which we have to do. I've told the governor, trust me, this is the beginning of us asking for these funds. There are programs now in Hartford. This is happening everywhere in the state, in the nation, and in the world. So we will have to continue the conversation. Senator Wong said this at the beginning, the impacts of climate, it's all connected. So yes, we need to take the kind of actions that Senator Wong was saying about the cleanups and the gravel driveways, but we do have to look at the systemic issues that are behind this.
Thank you, Kristen.
Hi, I'm Chris Reed. I am an engineer by trade, so be careful. I live on Lynbrook Road, so I've endured the two major floods that we've had. It's pretty obvious to me, even in the rain that we had on July 4th of this year, which was pretty severe, that the overpass or the Route 1 bridge over the Rooster River is a bottleneck. So I appreciate the upstream efforts. Certainly those will help. But that bottleneck is pretty severe. So I would say in your plans for the future or to take that into scope. And I know that's a state road, so I'm talking to state people, right? It all bottlenecks right there. I have a picture of a beach ball trapped, going under the bridge because the water was so high on July 4th. And I've watched the water back up from the bridge into my property, into the neighborhood. And by then, the level of the water in the river is gotta be 12 feet, 14 feet. It's very deep. So upstream, great, you reduce the flow, but you do have a choke point, and the whole system needs to be looked at.
What you're talking about is exactly why it's so important that the town and the city work together. Because I shared this with Senator Wong. We had a fence, a neighbor who had a fence along one of the channels that was needing repair, and because of legal liability, not that no one wanted to do anything, it was a question of the town, the city, or the state. And it went on for months. So what you're talking about is one of those points that is the city and the town, and I really, again, applaud our town for really working together, and we're going to need to do that in conjunction with the state.
I mean, I could sort of easily imagine that the water was up to the superstructure of that bridge, and that doesn't sound like a great idea for a steel structure. So there is also a long-term safety aspect.
Thank you.
My name is Karen Haig. We've lived on the Rooster River for almost 36 years now, so we know it pretty well. First of all, I really appreciate everything that's being done, and we're very excited to see this come to life. I'm a little surprised that we did not see the Rutland Avenue area on the list of reported flooding areas, so that's one point. Point number two, we're happy to sign an easement for you, whatever we could do to help. I would just hope that the property owners are notified when you're coming to work there. Number three, the letters of support. I'd just like a little clarification on what that means. There was a bunch of initials. I assume those are website addresses or committees or something that we could give letters of support to. So I would appreciate
it. Was the Flood and Erosion Control Board?
Yes.
HERB was the Flood and Erosion Control Board. And I think you're going to put the Plan of Conservation and Development. So, but I think to your point, and forgive me for jumping in to this, I get excited about this. I think part of what we have found as state legislators, having quote unquote evidence, right? Clear demonstration of impact to homeowners, whether that be a documented email, long or short, to Bill, those videos, the photos, those are what help us have, and the town have data points to be able to say, this impact is real. This is really making really life incredibly difficult and costing our neighbors.
So the POCD and the Flood and Erosion Board, absolutely, I'd be happy to do that. You know, what I probably will do is include this in the newsletter with a link to the, actually our Youth Fair TV, producer. He's really fast about putting things up. So I'll be able to do that with the PowerPoint information and that information as well. I do want to note though, if anyone did take a form, an easement form, so that has to be notarized. And so I would recommend, if you like, to just go down to the town clerk's office, which is, right on our town hall green, ask them to, notarize it and just say, give this to Brenda and it'll get over to us.
Just one last point. It just seems appropriate that the Rutland Avenue neighborhood, Brentwood, etc., Camden, be added to the list of reported flooding locations because it's pretty severe.
Yeah, I think we had Camden, but when we said Camden, we mean the whole area. We have it on there, but we'll make sure it's clear. Yep.
Well, on our list, Camden is one of the areas being caught up in this project.
Yeah. As Liz Zisma pointed out, our RTM, the London Brook on one side is got state property and on the other side it's got condo property, and there are dead trees that the state has planted. How do we get them to ameliorate or fix that?
The state has somebody in charge of trees. We'll call it like a tree warden. We can contact them and let them know about those trees. You're at Strathmore condo? Yeah, okay.
Hi, my name is Jay Washburn. We live at 44 Ville Place. I had a couple of questions. The first one was the easement forms. We really want to sign those and have them notarized. However, I'm really concerned that you're going to dredge out behind our property before the mitigation plans are completed or even have completed. And if we get another storm like Ida, which was worse, in my opinion, than 2018, all of it will be for nothing if you dredge it out, because we have an island now. We don't have a creek anymore in the back of our yard. It's an island. So the amount of dredging that would be required again would be on us this time, because I understand this is a one-time deal. So I would fully prepared to sign the forms, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse. And I'd rather see the flow slow down first before and be more assured that there, in a normal rainstorm at least, or even a heavy rainstorm, we would not be affected with silt and erosion like we have in the past. And that may be the concern from other people as well. There's a reason why you haven't had many forms signed.
Yep, you do bring up a good point. We were wondering why you hadn't signed the easement, to be honest with you, in the discussion. I still would suggest signing the form. Let's get the ditch or the water course cleaned out, and then when the next storm comes, you may at least get the benefits of that. While right now, if it comes and it's not cleaned out, I will guarantee you get flooded again. That's all I can tell you.
Bill, just for everybody's knowledge,
sure.
My own as well. So, for example, what if we were to get all the easements and we said to everyone, just give it to us, but we're going to wait? Now, would it be better to have all the easements, do it in a coordinated fashion? And then the second part of the question would it be better to do it before our phase one project, or would it be better to do it after the phase one project's complete? Or you don't know. I mean, it's okay to say if you don't know.
Yeah, ideally it would be after, because then, like you said, it reduces the chances of it. But again, we don't know when the next storm is coming. And so that's why that makes it a difficult question to answer.
The area between the park and Floor and Decor over there was just dredged out about a week or two ago with some help from others in the neighborhood. And that was partially blocked for the last 2 years from Ida. I took pictures and everything and got no responses. So every time it rained, even an inch, water comes flowing across the park and takes the shortcut to our house. So I'm worried that there's nothing to stop that from happening again.
Yeah, realistic, I guess, for the interest of time, whatever, I'll have to get back to you on that, to be honest, to be fair, because I think we'd have to talk to our conservation department, have to talk to other people from the DPW as well, and find out what we will, as a collective effort, try to find the best solution for you.
Yes,
as I said, ideally to have that one done and then do it would reduce the chances of having to do it again. It's just that if the storm happens, and please, not next month, you know what I mean, then you're susceptible because the water's got nowhere to go. It's half the sediment's blocking the pipe, even,
right, but I know that the creek, you might get another couple of feet down, but that's in our area. That channel, creek, whatever you want to call it, isn't very wide, especially where it was built with concrete and brick walls. It's only 3 feet wide, maybe. And
yeah, I could talk a little bit more after on that. And like I said, this will probably most likely be continued. It's not a blow off by any means, as you know. Unfortunately, if you look at that map, you're at the bullseye, definitely for all the watershed.
No, that's okay. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
I had one more question. Is that okay? All right. So, and then will the detention areas be dredged, or will they be left as is and just berms put up and dredged so you get maximum effectiveness from, like in Tungus Hill Park? Will they be digging any of that out? Will they be removing trees?
Well, just to let you know, in general, for these detention areas, because of the high water table, that's why we had to go with the berm, dike effect or dam effect, because if we excavate the environmentalists don't like that because it's all wetland soil, we'll be ruining the vegetation and all that kind of thing. So that's why we're there's going to be ever so slight excavation. There'll be excavation for the core of the berm and the spillway will have to be excavated. And that's why we're doing a 3-to-1, I think, requirement for mitigation of the wetlands by the DEP. So that part is why, we had to go with the berm effect. To answer your question about how often it would be dredged now, be honest with you, it depends on the storms. If we have 6 inches of sediment, that's not going to make that much of a difference. If we end up with 2 feet of sediment or any sediment that's blocking the outlet, we're going to have to maintain it. And so it really will be on a case-by-case basis. Throughout town, if it's not a homeowners association, there are a couple of detention ponds that the town does control and maintain. There are some that we haven't touched in 10, 15 years, and then there's others that we clean every 4 or 5 years. So it really depends on the site. For these ones here and the importance and the effort of what we're going through, you could bet that they'll be on our radar, no doubt about it.
So I think it's worth having the conversation, Ray. I would like to say, first of all, for anybody who fills out a form, the town of Fairfield's not just going to show up in your backyard without letting you know first. I promise. But we should have a discussion, Bill, and coordinate, because even if we get all the forms now, and if it makes sense to wait and then coordinate and people feel more comfortable because they know that we're doing them all at once after the phase one piece, then maybe that's the best way to go. And maybe we should couch it that way, when we share information with our Rooster River residents.
And it also depends on quote, a group. If you have 3 or 4 neighbors in a row that sign, that gives us a lot more, access than one here, one way down the road, where it's a
so maybe if we
situation.
explain it a little bit better and maybe even do sort of a explanation about what we just talked about, and then go back out like we did and put these notices in people's doors again. Let's see how we do.
Obviously, the more that we have, the better, and it's better to do a group at a time. It's more cost effective, and it's better for the neighborhood. In terms of the timing, that's something that we can discuss. It might depend on the time of the year. Depends on whether Bridgeport will seek assistance from Bridgeport if it's on their side as well. So it depends on the location, and it depends on the time of the year, and what impediments are there. As we mentioned before, with our survey and doing the phase, I think it was phase 3 there. The sediment removal, that's still probably a year away, so.
Right, but I think that just giving people the information about that, we would couple them all together and then make it a decision and to reassure residents that we wouldn't be just showing up at their yard.
And that's correct. We would always give them advance.
So that's important. And I have to say, it's very helpful that one of our state representatives represents Bridgeport and Fairfield, because I think that's very conducive to improving our relationship with getting things done, because it's been a little challenging in the past.
Hi, I'm Scott Burns, and I live on Brooklawn Parkway. And it seems what I've learned here tonight is that mitigation on the Horse Tavern Brook appears that would occur on the Bridgeport side. That's correct?
Yeah, the Horse Tavern Brook is on the Bridgeport side. So yes, that is true, that Horse Tavern Brook, that comes from Bridgeport upstream down to Fairfield.
So one of the earlier slides talked about dredging from Brooklawn to like Kings Highway, but does that include the Horse Tavern Brook, like Brooklawn Parkway, or is it Brooklawn Avenue?
It joins Rooster River right there, that Horse Tavern Brook. This is the Horse Tavern. Let me put the laser on. So this is
right,
the Horse Tavern Brook here. This is all Horse Tavern Brook, and this is the Rooster River.
But is the dredging included in the Horse Tavern Brook?
If you don't mind, when we met out with FEMA regarding the Horse Tavern Brook, we didn't notice too much accumulated sediment in that area. It was actually the opposite. It actually was scoured. It even scoured some of the walls that are there. So that has an opposite problem than some of the parts that have deposition of the Rooster River.
So just in terms, like we still incur like flood damage, so we do have a lot of the walls collapsing and a lot of sediment, it seems, in storm drains. Is there anything we can do to sort of advocate for that?
We did get FEMA approval, and it's scheduled. We have to get the permits, but we are planning on repairing the wall in that area. And I mentioned before, in terms of sediment, the town is going with a salt solution, has been going with a salt solution, so there shouldn't be too much sediment coming from the catch basins unless it's coming from, neighborhood yards or just natural accretion from the rivers, but it's nothing that DPW is doing.
Okay, well, I guess the last part, and you guys didn't, put in a nice new bridge there. We appreciate that. But there seems to be like an island, right, sort of forming, coming under the bridge, like that piece. So,
believe it or not, that was part of discussions with our conservation director at the time. There's some environmental benefits of that. If it becomes an impediment, then we'll have to get a permit and we'll remove that because we can't have it block the conveyance. So we're on the same page of that, definitely.
I also live on Brooklawn Parkway. I'm a neighbor of Scott's. That bridge, while we were happy to have a new bridge, is actually making the flooding on Brooklawn Parkway worse. Why is it making it worse? The clearance from the bottom of the bridge to the bottom of the brook is about 3 feet. The bridge that it replaced, the older bridge, had a much higher clearance. And because the clearance on the new bridge is much lower, water coming down the the Horse Tavern Brook gets clogged at Valley Road. And actually the water has to go either above the bridge, which it did on July 4th of this year, or it has to go to the side of the bridge, going down both directions of Brooklawn Parkway. It's a nice bridge, but it's just, it doesn't allow for enough water to travel beneath it to keep the water flowing. Things get backed up, there's twigs and everything gets clogged up and it gets backed up, and now we have both sides of Brooklawn Parkway getting flooded, which I've lived there for 25 years. And the direction that I live on is from Stratfield Road. If you come off Stratfield Road going toward Valley, I live on that side of Brooklawn Parkway. It's a two one-way street road. The other side now is getting flooded because of the problems that the bridge is creating by not letting enough water flow to go down the brook. And I'm just, and there is a lot of sentiment by the bridge that I think probably needs some dredging. And I've lived there 25 years. We've had flooding every year, numerous times on that street. I'm just, we're getting kind of tired of it.
Yeah, a couple of things just to clear up though, and again, we can discuss after if we have to. But the old bridge that was there was 2 parts. One was only 2 foot high. The other was, you're right, 4 foot high. As I mentioned before, when we go for permits of the bridge, we can't do any downstream harm. After 12 different hydraulic model analysis, they finally got the approval for the current design of that bridge. The one key part is they took out the middle pier, which was definitely a quote a hanger, or was causing blockage. So there was some improvement there. The other thing to let you know, and sometimes the town's just handcuffed, that whole Brooklawn Parkway area, the reason why you're getting flooded is that whole channel is designed for less than a 5-year storm, what we call a 5-year storm. So a couple of inches of rain, it will fill and overflow. The only solution to do it, which would be very expensive, but you'd also lose the park, would be to take out the whole thing and make a large channel. And you'd lose the park. You'd have to go road to road. You'd lose the park, and then we'd have to somehow figure out a way not to bomb out the downstream people of Rooster River. So on that one, our hands are tied. We hired a consultant years ago to even look at that situation. And unfortunately, outside of the detention, which we were talking about before, where there will be an indirect benefit for Horse Tavern, by holding back some of the water, that should allow some of the more water to come from Horse Tavern Brook. And that's the benefit that you'll get unless there's detention, proposed in Bridgeport. Yeah. But we are constantly looking at that. And just to let everybody know, I think at least half of us here have experienced flooding ourselves. And we do take all your problems very serious. There's nothing more frustrating than having to worry about, the next rain event, throwing wet rugs and sheetrock out. It's a, PITA. And believe me, we want to help you. We want to solve these problems. So from a personal standpoint, I know what you're feeling. And we are doing what we can. So
Bill, to just be clear, you're saying that this bridge replacement was designed with consultants and DEP, and everybody said that's the way it had to be?
Yeah, that's correct.
But if it's causing more flooding, I mean, is there any?
I don't think it is. I just think it's, like Tony had mentioned.
They're saying it is.
No, I'm just saying but I could show you storms and pictures of before it too. It hasn't changed. It's just that the storm events have changed.
Well, the storm events we're getting more water than we used to get.
The conveyance is still the same. It's even a little bit more improved on it. The only thing I will say is I did not go out there after the July 4th storm. I'll take a look, and if there was some sediment accretion, we can look at that. And as Scott had mentioned, if that quote little island underneath the bridge has gotten much larger, we can tackle that, because that's the thing that we can do to improve it. And that section right by the bridge would be the town responsibility. It's in our right of way. So yes, we can make some improvements there.
Yep. Madam First Selectwoman, may I just reinforce what Bill just described about the change in design, the 2 foot and 4 foot, and now the 3 foot, and the removal of that middle piece. We as lay people will make assumptions about the causes, and we are, because we're seeing the results. What you're saying is, yes, this is the result of what we're seeing when storms happen. But there is no question we are seeing larger rain amounts, more frequent rain amounts. So the input is changing as well. So that goes back to the systemic piece. And I think part of the stress that I've seen over many years of talking about these issues is we see what we see and we understand what we understand. Part of what we have to fund and continue to fund is that we have our engineers who are experts, but also the consultants who come in and help us. It doesn't mean there aren't unintended consequences of things, but I'm just naming the reality of what Bill just said. We're getting more rain. There's more volume coming down, which means that what we have, even when we've improved it, is having to convey more.
Thank you, Kristen. And listen, Bill is happy to go see if there's some silt built up there, but it is true. I mean, listen, I have people calling our office all the time talking about, I'm flooding now. I never flooded before, because this water is just coming, these events, it's just coming too quick. And even my own house, I used to get a little flooding. I'm getting a lot of flooding. So, he will come out and look at it. And I just want to say, thank you very much for coming out tonight. Listen, I know it's been frustrating for so many of you. I've been to a lot of your houses. I've seen the damage. I see what's happening. And we are sincerely trying to fix this problem. And as you can tell by all these slides and all this engineering and the permits and all this stuff, it takes time, unfortunately, right? The wheels of government, unfortunately, move slowly. But we are trying to do it as quickly as possible. So if there's any follow-up questions that you have afterwards, please feel free to email me, email Bill or Mega, and we will follow up with you. And I will take the advice from some of our residents about including information about the gravel driveways, about information on how to contact our flood and erosion and our POCD and all of those things. And if there's anything else that you think we should include, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know. And thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.